It's undeniable at this point that movies influence our behavior. That's true for decisions we make as individuals and the choices we make as a culture, our taboos, what we permit and forbid, punish and reward, all our social interactions. When Jaws came out in 1975, not only did it prompt the overhunting of sharks for 2 decades, it traumatized an entire generation into an unnatural fear of the ocean, specifically, the inability to see beneath you in deep water, no doubt fueled by the paranoia of getting sucked downward with a piercing pain from a row of teeth embedded in your sternum. In the 2004 film Sideways, the wine snob protagonist, Miles, played by Paul Giamatti, crippled the entire Merlot wine brand with a single line of dialogue.
And if they want to drink Merlot, we're drinking Merlot.
Oh, no, if anybody orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I am not drinking any f***ing Merlot!
Okay, relax, Miles.
Sales for that wine varietal declined for 2 decades, while the wine Miles worships in the movie, Pinot Noir, saw a 170% increase in California production. Miles is not a wine expert or even an inspiring character, but our culture treated that single line as gospel. And that's just 2 among dozens of examples. Before the age of the online influencer, boys in the West, meaning Europe and the USA, grew up idolizing 3 kinds of celebrities: sports legends, musicians, movie stars. And for most of cinema's history, guys were presented with strong, stoic, and almost universally competent heroes on the silver screen to look up to. We saw them outnumbered, outmatched, betrayed, bullet-ridden, bruised, beaten, and bloodied, but ultimately victorious, vanquishing the adversary through sheer will, resilience, determination, or sacrificing themselves to save wives and children, brothers in arms, sometimes their entire country. Cinematic heroes were spawned from a template of man's most masculine instincts: protect and preserve life, prioritize honor and integrity above reputation. As John Adams said so eloquently, always stand on principle, even if you stand alone. In the past 20 years, however, Hollywood has changed, certainly not for the better. All those iconic heroes of the past that we admired, they have new movies now, new reimaginings. They have all been deconstructed, their past histories changed to suit an agenda which seeks to cast them in the least favorable light. Did you once find him inspiring? Well, he was secretly a fraud, a selfish, greedy coward his whole life. Or he cheated on his wife, and you just didn't know it. And now he's old, alone, miserable, and full of regret, which is why you never should have sought to emulate him. He was toxic and patriarchal, a mansplaining misogynist, and probably a colonizer of some innocent third world country. He's useless and out of touch with our modern sensibilities. Sounds fun, huh? Come see our movie then.
Updated for modern audiences.
The relationship between the crucifixion of iconic heroes and societal decay isn't difficult to understand, even though Hollywood considers themselves to be profoundly complex. Depicting men in film as valiant, independent, revolutionary, self-reliant, forward-thinking, proud, and resilient will inspire a male audience to strive for excellence and self-improvement, eager to intervene when they see injustice. If you go the opposite way, depicting men as submissive, weak, childish, cowardly, pathetic, optional, agreeable, unnecessary, stupid, bigoted, and slovenly, the result is a generation of men who disengage from society completely, who would never intervene to save anyone. They will save themselves first and skulk away without a second thought or a glance backwards, because you've never inspired them to strive for anything better. If you think that's an exaggeration, that movies don't affect you, consider how similar movie theater is to an actual classroom. You sit in rows, all facing the same direction. You're expected to be quiet, not talk, but only listen and watch. You're expected to stay in your seat, otherwise you might miss something important. So if you'll grant me that first, that no, movies are not just time killers and eye candy. They do influence your behavior. Then I next tell you this: there are horrific, real-world consequences for emasculating men in cinema. We'll talk about those at the end of this video. To prove this point, we'll look at 3 different movies: Funny Games, the original Danish movie Speak No Evil, and its cringe-inducing awful remake of 2024. 2 of these 3 are worth seeing and deserve spoiler warnings because I'll be talking about the endings of all of them. But the 2024 remake of Speak No Evil is absolute pig slop and definitively not worth your time. You could find more practical use in a bucket of dog vomit than in this remake. All 3 movies present a haunting and grotesque depiction of the emasculated man, all 3 of them fathers and husbands. Each story is a microcosm of 21st century Western civilization, a cautionary tale warning our current culture to correct its course. Funny Games, produced in 1997, then remade shot for shot in 2007, has been called a meta-horror movie because the killer breaks fourth wall and speaks directly to the audience. Through his dialogue and actions, he reveals to us that he knows he's in a horror movie and that we're watching him. At one point, when his accomplice is blasted into the wall with a shotgun by one of the victims, He grabs the remote from the coffee table and literally rewinds the movie itself to prevent this from happening. Imagine a serial killer screenplay written by an actual serial killer. That's Funny Games. Everything works out exactly as the killer wants it to. Everyone acts exclusively according to his fantasy.
You bet that you'll be alive tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and we bet that you'll be dead. Okay? Well, it's not an option. There has to be a bet. I mean, what do you think? You think they stand a chance? Well, you're on their side, aren't you?
And it's exactly this meta-narrative, a self-aware approach to the horror, that makes this first movie's emasculated man so provocative. The father and husband in this case, played by Tim Roth, is intentionally written to be weak, timid, ineffectual, irresponsible, submissive, hesitant, politically correct, and cowardly, because we're seeing this horror movie through the eyes of the killer. Therefore, the patriarch, the one person who could bring any shred of resistance to his plans, is a pushover. Funny Games is essentially about two young psychopaths who manipulate themselves into a family's home and torture them. Around midday, Tim Roth's character of George returns home from a boating errand with his son, who looks to be in about 6th grade, to find his wife hysterical and desperately trying to usher a couple of strangers out the front door, two awkward, preppy teenagers who look like they'd be picked last as caddies on the golf course. In real life, any self-respecting husband returning home to this spectacle would immediately grab these two punks by the white collar of their polos, drag them down the driveway, and toss them into the street. But because we're watching the killer's fantasy, George doesn't do that. Rather than trusting his wife's instincts, he instead shrinks away from the conflict and approaches the three of them like a social worker or hall monitor, trying to de-escalate a playground argument. He takes the side of the strangers and even apologizes to them for his wife's behavior, as if she's an erratic shrew, a constant source of embarrassment.
I'm sorry. My wife's not feeling well, so...
Notice that neither of these two young country club teens is the least bit intimidating. They're not armed, nor are they particularly muscular. Even when George's wife desperately calls on him as protector, the one who's supposed to provide safety to their home, he rejects her intuition.
And if it's just about some eggs, why are you so angry?
Look, I'm not going to justify myself in front... I asked you to throw them out. Maybe I have my reasons.
Only when it's far too late does George resist, and not with a punch or a shove, not even by grabbing one of his golf clubs to threaten them with a bludgeoning, but with an effeminate slap.
You better watch your tone, young man.
You better be careful, old man, or I'll break your eggs.
Now please leave.
Then he walks away, the cardinal sin, the worst thing you can do in a home invasion, turning your back on a direct threat. For the rest of the movie, George is incapacitated, and as punishment for his amiable, progressive, politically correct approach to confrontation, he endures the horror of watching his son tortured, his wife shamed, stripped, beaten, and humiliated. And if you think I'm reaching here, seeing an underlying message about emasculation where none exists, listen to this taunting line of dialogue from the killer moments after he hobbles George with his own golf club, then orders him to take his pants off so he can take a look at the injury.
You're the ship's captain, sir. You're aware that on board, the captain's word is law, aren't you? So what do you want to do?
Funny Games director Michael Haneke called the movie a criticism of violence, but perhaps unintentionally, he has presented us with a criticism of the 21st century man as well. The comfortable sloth that Nietzsche called the last man, so conditioned by society to be agreeable, passive, to self-censor, to flinch away from conflict, to avoid a fight, to presume the best in everyone, to believe that there's no crisis which can't be de-escalated with rational discussion, compassion, and compromise, so inhibited and soft that when he's finally threatened with true malice, he's not ready. Leaving his wife and son to fend for themselves, he fails completely and loses everything. Injured and helpless, bewildered at the idea that truly evil people have now stepped into his own home, George asks his predators,
Why are you doing this? Why not?
Indeed, George, why not? When you make it so easy. The subtext of the rhetorical question whispers, I do this because you let me. Even when the killer exits the house, leaving George and his traumatized son alone with the dumber, shorter, fatter, and weaker accomplice, George does nothing to deceive, overtake, or resist him. Can the world conceive of a more shameful and pathetic end for a father and husband than going to your grave violently, knowing that those who took everything from you could have been stopped if only you had the slightest courage to resist? And that agonizing theme, I did this because you let me, continues in our second film analysis, the even darker story of Speak No Evil.
He's only a child, for Christ's sake. I mean, what the hell is wrong with you? It is. Can you see? He's crying. He's in pain.
En nou maar op met janken.
You can't talk to him that way. What is wrong with you?
Oh my God. That's wrong? Because we do things differently?
But first, for context, consider this, because it will be important later. In 2019, Todd Phillips created the Joker movie as a symbolic expression of his own frustration with wokeness, cancel culture, political correctness, intersectional feminism, and how they all combined to kill the Hollywood R-rated comedy, especially those which attract male audiences. Similarly, an interview you can find online with Danish filmmaker Christian Taftrup reveals that his creation of the original Speak No Evil was inspired by his own frustration with the gynocentric feminized culture of Denmark and his country's rejection of traditional masculinity.
I had this theme for 3 films now, a take on Scandinavian masculinity or, the lack of masculinity. It's like, the modern masculinity where you're a bit, also a pathetic guy that doesn't, I'm not in touch with your more aggressive sides. It's something that I recognize from many of my surroundings here.
He sought to write a cautionary tale about how men adopting the values of such a feminized society, in which men are encouraged to self-censor, listen to marginalized groups, in short, to sit down and shut up, as Benedict Cumberbatch put it.
This sort of childish defensive position of not all men are bad and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, we just have to shut up and listen.
To regard any assertion at all, even raising your voice, to interrupt when someone's speaking, as toxic. This is catastrophically dangerous. Christian wanted us to see the worst possible fate that could lead to. Like George in Funny Games, the father and husband in Speak No Evil, whose name is Bjorn, is groveling, subservient, and spiritless in the face of aggression. Though the context is different. Bjorn and his wife meet a guy named Patrick while on vacation, though Patrick and his own spouse initially bring a wild excitement into Bjorn's predictable life. Patrick's plan is ultimately to kill them and maim their child so that she is unable to speak. Like the killer in Funny Games, Patrick gives Bjorn a series of little tests to make sure he is as much of a pushover as he appears. He doesn't want to have to deal with any unforeseen resistance down the road. The first test is the moment he approaches Bjorn at the pool, asking if he can use the deck chair upon which Bjorn's daughter has left her stuffed animal. Most men would immediately respond, "No, this is my daughter's chair. She'll need it when she gets out." However, glaring up at a larger man at least twice his own strength, Bjorn immediately flinches into action, moving his daughter's toy and sacrificing the chair, signaling to the killer, "This is my guy. I can take everything from this sycophantic people-pleaser and he will do nothing." From then on, it's just fun and games for Patrick. He knows he's going to kill Bjorn and his wife, but decides to play it out for a while, belittling him with subtle jabs. He knows Bjorn will do nothing. He's been conditioned by his progressive society to go along and get along. He's not some out-of-touch hillbilly conservative with outdated ideas about the patriarchy, one who thinks that his wife needs a man to come to her defense.
Wil je ophouden met dat geluid? Alsjeblieft, want ik word er een beetje gek van. Stop telling my daughter what to do. It's not up to you to tell my daughter what to do. Okay? Okay, relax.
Or that he should be so bold and conceited, have the hubris as the husband to decide when the family should go home. Times have changed. He was raised better. He's a postmodern man.
We had some really lovely days here.
Huh? What's going on?
Well, we have a situation here. Someone left without saying goodbye.
No, as I was just trying to tell Patrick, we had some really lovely days.
And then I ask again, why are you leaving?
Patrick, laat hem heel even uitpraten.
No, we had some good days. It's just, there's just some things that makes us believe that it's the best that we go home.
What are those things? I want to know.
It's many things.
Such as
the bed, for instance. It's really small, and Agnes doesn't want to sleep on the floor, so she comes in at night.
All this will come at a terrible cost for him, though. Like George in Funny Games, Bjorn will lose everything and suffer a miserable death himself. And the greatest line of Christian's magnificent screenplay is also its most haunting. After overtaking their vehicle, Patrick drives Bjorn and his wife to an abandoned area at night, which they know will be the place of their execution. Their daughter's tongue is cut from her mouth so that she can never reveal to strangers what Patrick and his wife have done to her parents. And just before, they are forced to strip naked and executed by stoning. Bjorn asks, just as George did,
"Why are you doing
Because you let me.
Because you let me, Patrick answers. Critics who hate this movie often point to their exasperation with Bjorn's choices, finding it ludicrous that anyone could be so meek and unassertive in the face of evil. But is it truly unrealistic? How many men do you know who, when asked for their own opinion, look first to their partner for consent? How many men do you see staying silent when they are publicly slighted or humiliated? Men who don't speak up for fear of being accused of mansplaining or labeled toxically masculine. What's frightening about Bjorn is just how ubiquitous the Bjorns of the world have now become. In some major metropolitan cities, they are the majority of the male population. The actors auditioning for this movie hated the original ending, so mad respect to Christian for not giving in and changing it for them. If he did, no one would be talking about it today. But you know who loved this indie foreign film?
It's Hollywood, baby. It's Hollywood, baby. It's Hollywood, baby. Hollywood, baby.
That's right. Less than 2 years after the original, we got Speak No Evil, Reimagined. Hollywood executives met up in their very diverse, very equitable, and inclusive corporate boardroom and said, movie's got a good premise, but this ending won't do. It's got this subtle messaging that seems to suggest the couple dies at the end only because Bjorn is a socially engineered, emasculated coward. Well, we don't want that. We don't want men in the audience getting any ideas. How do we, negate that, overturn it, reverse it even for our modern audience? Oh, you mean like the way we did with Joker 2? Folie à deux, where we took a character that lonely, marginalized men found inspiring as a revolutionary in the original.
You just wanted to make fun of me.
And then retconned the story in the sequel so he goes back to being a pathetic loser who nobody respects because he only imagined that he ever fought back as an anarchist and then gets assaulted in prison and stabbed to death. Yeah, that was a good one, wasn't it? I mean, sure, after marketing costs, we intentionally lost $100 million on a movie we knew everyone would hate, but it was worth it. I sleep better at night knowing that the reverse social engineering worked and we deconstructed an icon men found inspiring. It was worth it to tarnish the image of the original. Nobody quotes that movie anymore. As for this Speak No Evil remake, let's start with the casting. Yes, let's start there. Nothing gives away a cynical agenda in modern Hollywood as quickly as your casting decisions. In fact, these days your casting screams out your agenda so loudly, it can spoil half the movie's ending before we've even seen it. From the promotional photos alone, we know, for example, who will be the butt of everyone's jokes, who will never have a horrifically violent death, who will never be revealed as the coward who betrayed everyone for money. Let's play a little game, shall we?
I want to play a game.
I'll show you a series of images, still shots, and you tell me how much of the movie's ending you could predict from those pics alone. On the left is the victim couple in the original Speak No Evil, Bjorn and his wife Louise. He's no giant, but he's a head taller than her. The actress is rather frail and slight, considering the camera adds 10 pounds. Now check out the new couple from the remake, on the right. Reimagined. And now, renamed Ben and Louise. Notice anything different? Not only is she taller than her husband, she's taller than the guy who plays the killer in the movie. And this new Louise is now played by an actress, Mackenzie Davis, whose previous role was literally the Terminator. Now, returning to our juxtaposition, even without ever seeing the movie, how do you think Hollywood in 2024 is going to change the ending of the remake for the modern audience? Think the new couple just might make it out alive?
Ding, ding, ding! What do we have for her, Johnny?
That's a start. If the whole family survives, that would erase Christian Taftrup's haunting message about the dangers of an emasculated society, but it wouldn't negate it. No, to do that, this remake needs the Joker 2 treatment. To completely uproot, overturn, and reverse the moral of Taftrup's story. Try to prove it false, and then prove the opposite to be true. So, second question. What's the opposite of a story that warns men about the dangers of being emasculated by society? How about a movie that rejects the premise that you need masculinity or men or fathers or husbands in a family at all? An ending that says men are absolutely worthless and women are the true defenders of the home.
Not out there. And then down into the woods. I mean, in the dark.
Please, they have guns, okay? They hunt at night.
Okay, if they get inside, they're going to kill us.
I don't know what to do. I don't know. I don't know. I'm so sorry, Luis. I should have listened to you.
It's okay.
No, it's not okay. Like, I should have not let us come. We shouldn't have stayed.
Ben! Stop it! Listen to me. Look at your daughter.
That's it. You change the ending so that the father, Ben, is just as much of a cringing, flinching, cowardly little worm as Bjorn was in the original. But your Terminator mom, she's now unstoppable. She is your savior. While her husband cowers in the corner, Louise is cunning, innovative, and resourceful. successfully outsmarting and overtaking a killer who outweighs her by at least 60 pounds and has biceps twice the width of her own arms. In fact, the only successful contribution that Beta Ben makes in their struggle for survival is to break his own legs in order to facilitate their escape.
Randy lay there like a slug. It was his only defense.
If you're smiling at this point, I can't blame you. It is a stupid and ridiculous ending, but it's also dangerous. Here's why. Consider how this domestic violence story would play out in real life. Hollywood executives may pat themselves on the back for another female empowerment girl boss fantasy, but both men and women will take away the wrong message, if only subconsciously, from an ending like this. If disaster movies like 2012 can cause fear of the apocalypse that pushed some teens towards self-deletion, and Paul Giamatti can take Merlot sales with a single flippant line in Sideways, how much more deadly would it be for movies to give women unrealistic expectations of themselves in cases of assaults, muggings, home break-ins, and bar fights with men, downloading this subliminal message into their brains, not just in this movie, but in dozens over the past 20 years? Well, you've already seen the consequences. How many more stories do we have to see on X about single women taking their don't need no man attitude abroad and traveling alone in third world countries, only to be overtaken, abducted, and never seen again? Or worse, found in more than one piece. How many more videos will be posted of women attacked and then assaulted on subway trains while men either turn away or film it with their phones? How much more footage do we need to see of female cops being overtaken by the criminals they are attempting to arrest, endangering both themselves and the cities they are attempting to serve, before we realize that movies are not real life? Black Widow or Charlie's Angels kicking ass in a room full of very accommodating, well-choreographed stuntmen is not transferable to your own city streets, neighborhood dance club, and certainly not inside your own home. If you ever need an indication of just how terrible the consequences can be of adherence to this ideology of emasculation, all you have to do is glance across the pond at the UK, where their undying faith in the woke religion has resulted in a low-trust society that is tearing itself apart. To point out just one real-world example among a dozen I've heard this year on X, a true story recently came out in Britain that the legacy media would rather ignore, about a female cop, Constable Lydia Ward, who had her nose broken by an assailant she was attempting to contain at Manchester Airport. This man, on his own, knocked down and nearly knocked out 2 female officers by punching them in the face. For discretion, I won't play the audio. You can find it yourself on YouTube. And if you do, you can hear this poor woman, who never should have been put in this vulnerable position in the first place, crying and sobbing hysterically from the injury, admitting later that she was terrified by the confrontation. The most pressing question is this: what if the male officers had not intervened in time to save her? What if she had been left to fend for herself? What if there was no backup? What about next time, when she has the same confrontation all on her own in a back alley, or a bar, or on the side of a highway? How many more women need to meet a violent end, or cause one for those around her, before we realize that emasculation of the male in Western civilization endangers everyone, men and women, sons and daughters, and not just the guys who Hollywood dismisses as incels and online trolls when we tell you that we need to correct our course? Because I guarantee you this, ask any 30-year homicide cop or prison guard in a major metropolitan area who's seen the worst of humanity for most of his tenure. He'll tell you, the Patricks of real life, they don't commit violence against women and children because they need counseling or therapy or rehabilitation or reparations or a group hug, or because they are a product of their environment, or because maybe they just need to see one more video that says,
"Stop! Don't touch me there! This is my no-no square!" Stop! Don't touch me there! This is my no-no square!
Evil men who commit unspeakable acts of cruelty are not a puzzle to be solved, but only a chaos to be contained. If you want to know what drives them to it, it's summed up perfectly by the 4 words Patrick responds with when Bjorn asks him,
Why are you doing this? Because you let me.
Because you let me. Because you let me.
Philosopher Eckhart Tolle once compared the human ego to a cancerous cell, duplicating itself endlessly in a blind and insatiable thirst for more, ignorant of the fact that in its quest for power and fulfillment, for self-expression, it's destroying the very host in which it lives. I'll let you decide where that allegory best applies in this essay. If you made it to the end, I thank you for listening. Whether you agree or disagree with my take on this, I'd love to read your comments either way. And if you'd like to hear my take on the consequences of men replacing women with AI companions, click on the video on your screen right now.